Well, I apologize for my absence Monday morning. Unlike the white-collared elite, I was working like a dog on Labor Day. Either that, or as some people say, a man is made out of lead. A Millville man is made out of bird shit and lead. A mind that's fucked up, and cryptococcus please. You drink 16 ounces. What do you get? Another day sicker and deeper in shit. Bill Peduto don't call, because I can't go. I sold my health to the PWSA. Welcome to the River's Edge Radio Network. The question of the day, I was sick Monday. Was I sick because I was overworked because the man was putting me down on the now white-collared holiday? Or was I suffering the avian flu from birds pooping in my drinking supply? The PWSA needs to be investigated. It's time that there is an investigation. It's time that people go to jail, and I have news on that front. As I promised on last Saturday that I would talk to friends in Harrisburg, I did so, and apparently, I don't know if it was at my request or if they were being very proactive, but both people I spoke to in the House and the Senate have told me that there are investigations and things like that going on in the works, and there's actually a House bill that has made its way over to the Senate, which would put the PWSA out of the hands of the city and put it in the hands of the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission. So we are working on it. Trust me, I, Brian Crawford, have your back. We've got Michael Cohen here in studio as well.
Good morning, Brian.
How are you?
Fantastic.
You are one of those white-collared elites who took off on Labor Day, are you not?
I am one of those food service schleps who, by virtue of working Saturdays and Sundays, happens to have Mondays off.
White-collared elite enjoying the man's holiday. How in the world did Labor Day, you're listening to the River's Edge Radio Network, Pittsburgh's voice for local music, and we're asking, how did Labor Day go from a union holiday to white-collared secretary, receptionist, executive holiday? How did that happen?
Do union jobs get Labor Day off still?
No.
Oh, your job is union.
I worked like a dog on Labor Day.
No,
I was being put down by the man while everyone upstairs was out lounging around at the pole, eating hot dogs. I'm slaving away in the factory area downstairs.
Okay, I wasn't. I've never been fortunate enough to have a union job in my life.
Yeah, well, it's not all it's cracked up to be. Trust me. So the question is, do you think, and this is the question I want all of you to answer, was I suffering workers' fatigue or the avian flu?
I'm going to go ahead and blame it on workers' fatigue.
Workers' fatigue, you think?
Sometimes narrative is important, you know?
Yeah, I just, being put down by the man. As you know, last night, Irma has now, actually now it's a Category 1 hurricane. It keeps dwindling and dwindling. Oh, wow. So thankfully there, I had several relatives who decided to not evacuate at Rush Limbaugh's request. So they were stuck in Florida. Actually, they just couldn't leave. People were becoming stranded on the road because they couldn't fill up. The gas was running out, and they were actually, this is actually kind of disgusting, the gas companies, the gas stations were gouging prices, hotel companies were gouging prices, leaving people completely screwed.
And then they act like we're bad when looting happens, right?
Well, you're also bad when you steal, at least when you steal from someone's public home.
From a gas station that's gouging? From a grocery store that's gouging?
Another question for today's show, should Rush Limbaugh be charged with manslaughter for telling people on his radio show as a media person, as somebody who claims to be so intelligent that he has to tie half his brain behind his back just to make it fair, yet he claimed that the hurricane was a giant hoax, and then he himself traveled out of Florida. I doubt he traveled in an autonomous car. He probably took a private jet, but he took that private jet out of Florida and escaped the coming hurricane. As he as he guided all of his adoring fans to stay in the Florida area.
I feel like the bar for that would have to be, can it be demonstrably shown that someone actually died because they didn't evacuate because he told them? And in that case, maybe.
Yeah, I think he needs to be charged with something, even if it's no. I'm serious.
Reckless endangerment.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's almost like yelling fire in a crowded theater, except for much worse. Because if somebody runs out of a theater when there's no fire, at least they're not staying in a bad position. It's not like you're telling somebody like it's kind of like that girl who got charged for telling her boyfriend to commit suicide.
I think the issue with the theater is stampedes, actually.
Oh, okay.
Not just that people miss their movie.
Yes. So
well, no, and that's what I was saying. I think if it could be demonstrably shown that someone did in fact stay and then die after listening to him, then you would have a legal case. But
legal case, yes.
Potential manslaughter is not. I think potential manslaughter is just reckless endangerment, basically.
Yeah, so he should be charged with that. He needs to be charged with something. He's in a position, and it's unfortunate. And actually, you know what? I don't know what's more unfortunate. There's three different unfortunate scenarios at play, all at the same time, dealing with this Rush Limbaugh situation. Number one is the fact that people actually listen to him so intently that they would take his advice that seriously, even though he has absolutely no background in meteorology. And I don't even think he graduated college, which is not a blight on him for not graduating college. Well, no, it's just there are certain things you need a college degree for. Meteorology, one of those things. You can't pretend to be a weatherman without actually going to school for meteorology. You can comment on politics and you can be pretty intelligent about that. And actually, I've actually, as somebody who's taken political science classes, I feel that you learn way more in the field and getting involved hands-on than you'll ever learn in a classroom setting. So yes, there are certain jobs, retail management, for example. You will never learn anything in a classroom that will prepare you for retail management. But meteorology, one of those degrees, one of those fields you kind of need the degree for. So that's number one. Number two, unfortunate situation. Number one is that, again, people actually listen to him. Number two, I had it in my mind. This is all off the cuff. Number one, people need to not listen to him. Number two, he flies out of there. He is trying to use it just to push this political point.
Right.
He's put people at harm's way. I don't know. I just think he needs to be something needs to happen. Reckless endangerment.
At least he's finally trolling the new administration the way he trolled the last one, right?
I suppose.
Unlike Infowars or Alex Jones or whatever, who have basically gotten on board behind everything Trump's doing, Rush Limbaugh is still steering the ship in the exact same direction he's always gone. Wingnut Harbor, all the way out to sea, like headed for the fucking ice caps. Like he's not veering right or left now that Trump's in office. He is still loopy as ever, and that's a weird kind of respectable, actually.
Yeah.
You know, I mean. I was disappointed because
maybe it's all the drugs.
Because when Infowars came out, a decade ago or whatever, like half their stuff was kind of reasonable, and all of it was just patently anti-government.
Yeah.
And then as soon as Trump was in office, they pulled a total 180 and are super pro-government now and just anti-left, and it's scary. You know?
The sad thing is with Infowars is on Facebook often. Times they have the best production quality out of all of the videos that you're looking for on a specific subject matter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on, Facebook. You can't also share like the Washington Post as well as Infowars or something with a shred of credibility.
That might speak to who you've got in your feed. I never see Infowars stuff on my Facebook.
Well, it's not that it appears on my feed. It's in the trending things, like what's trending. As far as news, gotcha. And every once in a while I'll look up an event and it's like Infowars is the highest quality news story that they've put out there on Facebook in their news section.
Oh yeah, that should have gotten cut in their fake news purge earlier this year. There's
exactly.
no reason for Infowars to be listed. Infowars is entertainment. Infowars is entertainment for people who like turning things over in their brain, which is like me. Like I enjoy, like I said, again, especially before they swung to the right, and like 10 years ago when they were talking about like FEMA camps and stuff like that, I was like, this is interesting. And sometimes I'd get a lead from them and follow it, and usually it doesn't go anywhere or whatever. But like, yeah, it's entertainment for people who like social puzzles. It's not news.
No, and it's really sad. We were very nervous about this hurricane coming because it was supposed to actually, it was a very weird hurricane, and I was listening all last night to Tampa News, actually. I was listening to the Tampa newscast, and the meteorologist, an actual meteorologist, not Rush Limbaugh wearing the meteorology cape, an actual meteorologist said that he had never seen anything like this, the way that the storm kept going back and forth. It was supposed to be a Category 5 storm when it hit Tampa last night. Now, it changed a million times because originally it was supposed to go up the East Coast, and then it changed to the West Coast, which should have been a disaster, but then it ended up wobbling, and apparently, like, when lightning strikes in the eye, that actually means the storm is weakening.
Huh.
Which was something that kind of shocked me. I always would have imagined the lightning meant bad, but apparently in a hurricane, the lightning, in some cases, can mean good.
Perhaps
so
it's some sort of release, I guess.
I guess it ended up hitting Tampa at a Category 2, and it still was early this morning a Category 1 as it was traveling through Florida, which they said even the fact that it was still a Category 1 while traveling through the middle of the state was still a huge deal. Like, wow. So it's interesting. And it's just like, times like this, you wonder, are you going to lose somebody? And you think, do you really have your plans in order?
Right.
And if you don't, you need to think about that. I know I personally always want to make sure that everybody knows that if something does happen, and unfortunately I do pass away, I really want to make sure that I go to Hahn Funeral Home, the only family-owned funeral home here in Millville, also known for green burials. So it's eco-friendly as well.
Yeah.
So Hahn Funeral Home.
If you can't find a covert way to throw me out at sea or feed me to wolves, please give me the green funeral from Hahn's.
Yeah, exactly. It's the way to go. So 9/11 today is September 11th, and I'm not really going to say anything about it because what is there to say?
That's today?
It is today. Yeah, I mean,
forgot.
The only thing I can think to say is we still care, and it's a terrible tragedy for anybody who knew somebody or was affected by the disaster. But people like to turn every 9/11 show into a memorial, and I just don't know how appropriate it is.
I think it's wildly. I actually think it's inappropriate at this point to discuss 9/11 outside of its larger context. I think if people are going to have memorials for, if people who are not directly related to people who passed in 9/11 are going to have memorials, they should need to talk about the broad picture and have memorials for the millions of Iraqis that we murdered in the wake of that, and the half a dozen thousand troops that we sent to their deaths afterwards, and all the political maneuvering that happened after 9/11. I think if you lost someone personally, then do what you got to do. But if you're going to talk about it in a political context, I think
in a political context, sure. I do think you can memorialize people and remember people because people were affected, even if they didn't know someone personally, to see that kind of a disaster happen in their home country, because it's something we're not familiar with here, so it has a bigger impact.
But it's called blowback, and civilians in every other country know exactly what it means. And it's when your government goes somewhere else, stirs a bunch of shit, doesn't tell you what it's doing, and then the people that they're stirring the shit with come and strike back at the civilian population, and you're surprised by it.
Dude, we've got people listening to Rush Limbaugh on meteorology. Do you really expect people to think that far into something or that deeply into something?
I'm just saying the CIA had been over in Afghanistan doing all kinds of whack shit for decades
since the Cold War. Yeah.
Yeah, and
that was actually my number 2 point was we actually have Mindy here. She commented that anybody who puts their own safety at risk because of what Rush Limbaugh says should be sent in for deprogramming. maybe, but there are a lot of people who say, oh, well, let Darwinism take its course, and those people are assholes. I'm sorry, what a douchey, jackass thing to say.
At least they won't be voting in the next election.
I suppose. But I agree more with Mindy's standpoint of reprogramming and maybe, educating someone as to letting them know that Rush Limbaugh does not have half his brain tied behind his back, because after all of the Oxycontins he's taken, I don't know how he would be able to really operate his talk show doing so. So, we do have Vinyl Square, who's going to be in a little bit. I'm very excited about them. They are a group that's going to be playing here tonight at the AcoustiCafe, and then they're also going to be playing at the Smiling Moose tomorrow. So that's exciting, very happy to have them here in studio. But I do want to get your thoughts as to why I was sick Monday. I mean, I did work some overtime, well, people like Michael were out picnicking. Well, people, the white-collared elite of the working, or shouldn't say working class, of the office class, were out grilling hot dogs and flipping burgers. I was working overtime on Labor's holiday. So was I sick because I was put down by the man, or was it the avian flu, which they finally cleared Millville to drink water again? Not that really means anything in the city of Pittsburgh anymore.
Just to be clear, from a left vernacular, held down by the man. When someone puts you down, Brian, they're either insulting you or euthanizing you.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's good to know.
If you put down your cat, you're not just oppressing it. You are you're ending its
I'm
life.
learning, so I'm a recovering conservative, so I have to learn these things. So, Michael, we had talked about Rush Limbaugh. We said he wasn't, most likely he was going to leave by private jet, but if he did leave by an autonomous car.
Yeah, so I actually, originally I was just going to speak about an article, but I got a little bit insider knowledge as well that I'll touch on. So Germany has come out with the first set of guidelines for what it means to be an ethical autonomous car, right? Like, because you have all these decisions to make, right? We have these drones, these autonomous drones driving around our city. Right now there are people behind them, but at some point there will not be. And at that point, that car will need to start making decisions. Like, if a person runs out in front of it and another person is inside of it, whose life does it value more, right? Does it swerve and endanger its passenger, or does it? And here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that cars, like robots, commit is the thing, right? So you don't do kind of like a half-ass swerve or whatever. This thing is going to make a calculated decision. And with humans, probably it will split the difference or something. They haven't entirely worked that out. But for pets and animals, the option is way clearer, which is basically if it's not a human, its life is worthless. Because to swerve at all to miss a cat is more dangerous to the human than not swerving at all. So, and one of my friends who will remain unnamed dating someone who was working at Uber.
Okay.
And said that, basically, the calculation on whether or not these things will be hitting cats and dogs will depend on the size of the animal, and whether or not, again, hitting an animal of that size would be more or less dangerous for the passenger than trying to avoid it. So cats, these things are basically not, like, if it can tap the brakes a little for a cat, probably, but if it has to swerve or slam on the brakes or anything like that, not even going to touch them.
Wow.
It's just going to plow right through. Small dogs, anything along those lines. We're getting into numbers here, and this is what I always talk about when people talk about like benevolent AI, is that when you get into numbers, that's when catastrophes and weird depersonalized atrocities happen.
Well, that's interesting. So I could see both sides to the autonomous car issue. I personally have always been pretty opposed to it for several reasons that you talked about. Also, just like, what if someone hacks your car? That's always,
I've touched on that.
Yeah,
on the show
that's always worried me. But one thing I was thinking about this weekend was how many more people would have been saved potentially in Florida? Not saved, but how many people would have been able to possibly, but potentially have been saved if the hurricane would have really come in with as much force as we thought it would have if we were using autonomous cars? Because one of the big problems was people just couldn't leave. The traffic was so intense. I had family who lived in Florida who couldn't get like more than just a couple miles out of their house before it went to standstill traffic. And that's like the middle of the state, so that's going all the way up through the state. And you have to wonder how many people could potentially be saved with this autonomous car, because they all would start at the same time and brake at the same time, and it would get rid of a lot of the horrible human error that exists because people suck.
Yeah, I mean, well, and here's the thing is, I think the thing about these new technologies is that when they're working properly,
yes,
they will increase safety. And the question is what happens when they
stop,
get hacked, go on the fritz, stop working? But and that's also a thing, right? But then there's a third element, which is what kind of a society are we building, right? We're asked every day to choose between freedom and safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the place that you conceive your largest threat from is other civilians, then something like the Fourth Amendment that prevents the police from just searching your neighbor's house for weapons and drugs doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? We should probably get rid of it because it makes our society less safe, right? First Amendment allows Nazis to organize. We should probably scrap that. Makes our society less safe. And so I think this is these technologies ask us a similar question, right? Where you're like, okay, how much freedom do we want to trade for the safety of being in a car that we don't have control over, that will probably will have less accidents and optimize efficiency moving around our cities, right? The fact that you have no privacy as to where you're going because it's remotely programmed, so anyone can see where you're coming from, where you're going, where you've been over the course of your car's life, right? And where you go regularly, all these kinds of things. And then also the fact that, in any moment that control could be taken from you. And not just on an individual basis, but en masse, right?
Really, we've been having this argument outside of technology even. Just we mentioned 9/11 and explaining 9/11 in a larger context.
Precisely.
That's a situation where we gave up a considerable amount of freedom in exchange for security after 9/11, and we're still dealing with a lot of those questions today. A lot of that stuff is actually now starting to be rolled back. And it's interesting to see how all of that has come together. And really, and what's kind of amazing, actually, if you think about it, in other Western worlds, like other Western countries and societies, we still, despite after 9/11 happening and all of the tightening of security, we still have way more freedoms than a lot of these European countries in some ways, especially in issues like freedom of speech.
Well, I mean, I think fascism did a lot to curb, like World War II did a lot to curb freedom of speech in those countries.
Mm-hmm.
I think, no, for sure.
All right, well, we're going to bring in...
Although, can I
yes.
tell, civil liberties in a lot of those countries, other than freedom of speech, are actually oftentimes way greater. Like your right to not be searched and things along those lines.
Yeah, which we're still dealing with a lot of that issue, a lot of those issues here. You see a lot of cases come up. I know they just, in New York under the new mayor, they got rid of the stop and frisk thing, for example. So we're still having those conversations.
The drug war really did a number on the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah. So we're going to bring in Vinyl Square. They're going to join us for the weird news, and then we're going to talk about their upcoming performances here at Mr. Small's Theater, where we are broadcasting live. They're going to be performing at the Funhouse, which we can stare at right through our studio window. And they're going to be playing there tonight for the AcoustiCafe, and then they have a show tomorrow night at the Smiling Moose. So we're going to bring them in to talk about the weird news. But right now we actually have a new song from an artist that just joined the River's Edge Radio Network. His name is Gala. So we have a song from him. He just sent it to me the other day. It says, "This City Made Me." New music right here at riversedgepgh.com. Pittsburgh's voice for local music.
Yeah. It's still city, baby. Look at where I came from, headed to to the left, B. You can ride my way, no jet ski. I ain't gotta say it with the P on the hat. We ain't gotta race, but I be on the track. Hit him with the bass, hit him with the slap. I ain't gotta chase, this is where it's at. Look at where I came from, headed to the top. Said it can't be done, but I never stop. Give me just a reason, I'ma make it hot. Barely even begun, but we about to pop. The city made me, the city made me. City and chips don't debate me. No AC when it get hot. Just aim me because we been hot. You know we gotta win, right? You know we represent, right? Not where I'm from, but where I am, right? But where I'm from is still we're in, right? Yeah, you know this now. Don't call it gravity the way I hold this down with the camera at. Cause I'm focused now. Down the dirty like below the ground. Yeah, my motive's devoted to show my town. My goal is to grow closer to the crowd. Bring home these trophies and hold them proud. Never sold my soul with the city, molded the crown, yeah. This my kingdom made it still. If you not moving, then I'ma take the wheel. No more games, you can't take a meal. I'ma go hard for mine, so date for real. Look at where I came from, headed to the top. Said it can't be done, but I never stop. Give me just a reason, I'ma make it hot. Barely even begun, but we about to pop. The city made me, the city made me. City and chips don't debate me. No AC when it get hot. Just aim me because we been hot. Back on the field for real, we much liver. We don't stop, we still hot, we on fire. We don't stop, we still hot, we on fire. We don't stop, we still hot, we on fire. Back on the field for real, we much liver. We don't stop, we still hot, we on fire. We don't stop, we still hot, we on fire. We don't stop, we still hot, we on fire. Look at where I came from, headed to the top. Said it can't be done, but I never stop. Give me just a reason, I'ma make it hot. Barely even begun, but we about to pop. The city made me, the city made me. City and chips don't debate me. No AC when it get hot. Just aim me because we been hot.
Stay awake, let me hear you running into the street. It's where we're bound to meet. What can I say about you never coming? Or back to me, I guess you better leave. Hey. Hold me if you please, but don't you ever let me leave. Oh, I'm telling you, it's not what you believe. Another dying day, well girl, it's gonna help you when I say time for you to stay awake. And I know this ain't my town. The only way for me to go is down, unless you find another way around. And furthermore, I'll take the head. Please say, girl, I hope you miss. Well, I never did get that kiss. Come on. Tell me again, I thought that you were my friend. You're fast asleep, your own dream land. You're walking all around, not a foot on the ground. You're gonna drag on down. And me, well, at least for the show, if I say yes, baby, you say no. That's just how the story goes. Yeah, and I don't care what you did. There's not a living thing to get me out of this. Just as long as you can give me my fix. That's right. Stay awake, hear what I have to say.
All right, Vinyl Square here on the River's Edge Radio Network, broadcasting from Mr. Small's Theater. Brian Crawford and Michael Cohen with you here today. It's time for the weird news, guys. How are you doing?
Let's check that out.
It is the weird news. So we have with us today, Vinyl Square. We have Connor, Michael, Benjamin, and John. And where are you guys from before we jump into the weird news?
Nashville, Tennessee.
From Nashville, Tennessee. Traveled all the way up here to Pittsburgh. Do you know Pittsburgh has like a cool music vibe here as well. So it's kind of cool to see somebody from Nashville come up. I'm interested to hear after you guys go to the AcoustiCafe tonight, some of your thoughts here on what we have going on in the Steel City. But it is time for the weird news, and I'm hoping that you guys will contribute with the weird news as well and kind of chime in. Story one, just so you know, so everybody knows who's listening, we tell 3 weird stories to keep the monster at bay. It's a beast that has been terrorizing Pittsburgh for decades, as long as we know. It could be longer. It's a beast no one's seen, and Michael and I.
Chupacabra.
What's that?
The Chupacabra.
Yeah, it goes by many names, but yeah, it's been terrorizing the city, and for many years I was the lone sheriff standing in the way from this beast, terrorizing the city and crushing Pittsburgh into total destruction. But now I have Michael here to assist me with not 1, not 2, but 3 weird stories to keep the monster at bay each and every week. Story number 1, we've been talking a little bit about this Hurricane Irma in Florida, and to my knowledge, it has not reached New York City yet. But you might not be aware of that when you look at this story, where there was an entire basement in New York with nearly a dozen sharks in the basement, several of which were living and several of which were dead. So it's kind of like some sort of morphed version of Sharknado, I guess.
Shark bait.
Shark bait, yes. So
Probably just like walked in on somebody's little operation there. They're like, "Oh yeah, this is the flooding."
Or they were hungry.
This is definitely not me making soup.
yeah, something you don't see every day in New York. However, maybe you do. I've never been to New York City. So.
I grew up around New York. I've never seen a basement full of sharks. No.
You never kept sharks in your basement.
But I mean, they've got like mutant turtles,
0 sharks,
mutant turtles, and everything else in the sewers. So why not sharks, right?
I mean, it's less strange than some things people have in their basement.
Actually, that's true. There was a
That's
shark,
true, man.
a mutant shark villain on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when we were young.
That's
So
right. See?
There is documented evidence of sharks.
It's
in this.
possible.
We were hanging out with Leo last night.
What a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Michael, you've got our second story.
Yeah, Brian, you don't have to answer this, but have you ever taken hallucinogens?
No.
Well, if you ever listen
That's
to
illegal.
anybody who's ever come to, if you went to the AcoustiCafe when I hosted, you would know that sleep deprivation is very hallucinogenic at times. So, in a way, yes.
And I know you abused the hell out of that.
Yes.
So, well,
I am definitely an addict.
lots of people use hallucinogens, and including myself when I was younger, for recreation. For some claim it's as antidepressants, for migraines. Now there is a hallucinogen that people are saying could possibly disrupt opioid addiction.
Oh.
It's called ibogaine, and it is
Ibogaine.
Ibogaine.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I've
Yeah.
heard of that.
And it's found both in parts of South America and also parts of Africa. Different tribes have been using it as like a spiritual ritual for hundreds of, possibly thousands of years. But in the 60s, in Italy, some junkie heroin users were trying to take it recreationally and realized that it greatly reduced their cravings for heroin.
Wow.
And since then, there's been research on again, off again, depending on the mood, around drugs going on. And now there's big research, around ibogaine possibly being a new treatment. Basically, if you've ever taken hallucinogens, you come out on the other end fundamentally different a lot of times. It disrupts a lot of your patterns. And so they're saying that this one essentially kind of reboots your brain. It won't, if you have addictive tendencies, it's not going to change those, but the actual immediate cravings are greatly reduced.
Wow.
Yeah.
So weird story number 3. This is a personal story. So as you know, we were talking about Labor Day and what it used to mean and what it means now. It's become the white collar holiday when it used to be Labor's holiday. And the reason why it was Labor's holiday is because of the struggles that Labor went through. And I'm going to take you on a little story here, a little journey. So the other day, just yesterday actually, I was at the Frick Museum. And Frick he pretty much ran Carnegie Steel during the Homestead Strike and the Battle of Homestead. Are you guys familiar with the Battle of Homestead?
Well, we're originally from Boston, Massachusetts, so we moved down to Tennessee. So this is actually my first time in Pittsburgh. I don't know about you guys.
Yes, we got that right.
So
Okay. Well, the Battle of Homestead is actually of historical significance not just in Pittsburgh but worldwide. It was when the steelworkers in the Homestead steel mill went on strike, and they actually took over the steel mill completely. They would not let the owners back in. So Henry Clay Frick, hired the Pinkertons, which the Pinkertons are a private military. It would be like, so the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra musicians went on strike this year. It would be like the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra hiring Blackwater to come in to crush the strike. That's essentially what happened in Homestead, and there were some deaths, and it was this big deal, and it basically crushed labor unions in the steel industry in Pittsburgh for many, many years. So, and the reason why I say this, and the reason why I go on this journey is actually, let's go back further in time. A couple years ago, I was at Irwin Art and Jazz Nights, and I went downstairs into Cafe Supreme, and there was this brewery that was looking to start up in Cafe Supreme, and they were giving away free beer all night, as much as you wanted to drink. I was just tossing them back craft beer because they didn't have permission to sell yet because they weren't officially opened. And it was really, really awesome. I mean, it was a fun night. So what does craft beer in Irwin in a basement have to do with the Homestead Strike, you ask?
I don't know, Brian. What?
Very little. I left the Frick House Museum thinking about the Homestead Strike and thinking about that time period. And my friend and I, Nick Rabiel, who's a local musician here in Pittsburgh, we were looking for somewhere to eat. And when I made a wrong turn, all of a sudden I look to my right and I see Couch Brewing, a sign right there on the road. They moved from Westmoreland County, the next county over, it's about 40 minutes away, to Pittsburgh, this brewery that I stumbled upon 2 years ago, and it completely disappeared from my life, had no idea where it went. It showed up on my way back from the Frick Museum. So because of the Homestead Strike, I rediscovered this brewery that I thought I would never discover again. I thought I'd never drink their beer again. So I can thank the men who fought the Pinkerton armies for allowing me to enjoy another couch brewing beer. So if anything, on Labor Day, even if you're some white-collared snob, you know that you can always appreciate the Homestead Strike simply for the fact that people can discover good beer in because of it. So yes,
and if you want to learn more about the Pittsburgh Strike, the Homestead Strike, there's actually a play opening this month.
Serious?
Yep, I'm going to see it with my dad.
Wow.
It is a one-act play about the Homestead Strike of 1892 by Mark Clayton Southers. It's going to be at the Pump House at 880 East Waterfront Drive in Munhall. All right, and it is September 15th, September 16th, 22nd, 23rd, and 23rd.
You know what's even more strange about that?
Huh.
Do you know what Henry Clay Frick's house was called?
No, what?
Clayton.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Also,
So-
shout out to Alexander Berkman, who shot Frick 6 times during the strike.
So there you go. But you know what? It also showed that Frick was a badass because then he refused to go to the hospital. So that's an
He
interesting
refused to go
story.
to the hospital.
He did. Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
He was a beast of a man.
He was a beast of a man. He was a jackass, but he was a beast of a man. So basically, this guy, after the strike, he gets there's an assassination attempt on his life in his office in downtown Pittsburgh
by an anarchist from New York.
Yes, in the Frick building. He refused to go to the hospital until he finished his day's work.
And then once he got there, he refused anesthetic so he could help them find the bullet. And this anarchist, although Berkman was also a fucking gangster, because he came in, and after he'd finished unloading his pistol, they tackled him, and he pulled out a dagger and stabbed Frick in the leg as well. Like, he was going for it. And then he was in jail over in Homestead, and Emma Goldman, who was his lover in New York and a prominent feminist at the time for birth control and anti-draft stuff, came and set up, I believe it was an ice cream shop across the street, or maybe it was a bakery, I forget, the ice cream shop might have been in New York, and they dug a tunnel underneath the road to the Homestead jail to try to get Berkman out, but they didn't have Google Maps yet, and so the tunnel didn't come up where it needed to.
So there you go. Welcome to Pittsburgh. Now you guys have an education.
Spotted horse cannot be killed by bullet.
That's right. So we've got Connor, we've got Michael, we've got Benjamin, and we have John here of Vinyl Square, and I'm so excited to have you guys here in studio. We've got another song coming up, but you guys have traveled from Nashville. Where have you traveled to on your way to Pittsburgh?
Well, we left Nashville riding the first hurricane out of the other ones. Harvey just left Houston, and the last finger of it, the last bitch slap of the hurricane was coming around to hit Nashville. And we actually, you're speaking of breweries, it brings up a couple points. We played 2 breweries in a row right before we got to Philadelphia. So we're playing the Tennessee Brew Works as the heavy rain started to happen. Water was lapping through the front door. They were like coming around. And,
Wow.
like, Captain, we're sinking. Like all their brew areas were starting to get flooded. Yeah. And so we played that, and then we got the hell out of Dodge. Drove 50 miles before our van's alternator broke down, and we had to fix that next day. Everything's fine. It's been running great.
Can you imagine if you got stuck there?
Yeah, we
During
would have been
during that flood?
in waist deep
Because,
water. Exactly.
I mean, it's
where
one
we
thing
were.
to get stuck there when you are from the area. I mean, that's still got to be a horrible disaster. But if you're unfamiliar with the area, you don't know anybody who lives there, you don't have even a flooded house to camp out in, I imagine that would be kind of the worst scenario possible.
Well, we've got our house on wheels.
Oh, you got a house
We're
on
driving-
wheels.
Yeah, we're driving an RV.
Okay,
So
nice.
That's what the alternator broke.
The
in.
Lindy.
So,
So
it doesn't.
we slept in a Walmart that night. We slept in many Walmarts. But yeah, the alternator died, pulled off the highway. It was still raining a ton, and we jumped it and drove it to a Walmart crashed, and then went to
Okay.
a mechanic the next day.
Well, does your RV, is it like souped up like a Batmobile, James Bond type of beast where you can like pull a string and like a raft comes up like underneath it?
It's
Yeah,
from
actually, when you pull
85.
that string, the exhaust falls off.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that'll mess up anyone behind you.
So, Han Funeral Home, they're very eco-friendly in a way that's productive. In your guys' case, trying to save the environment, it would be a detriment.
Yeah. I mean, it's
We don't rock the best gas mileage. We'll say that.
and when you're behind it, you start to pass out too on the highway from
The
the fumes.
fumes.
So was that like one of the most interesting shows you guys performed in that brewery while it was starting to flood?
Yeah.
Did you guys like stop in the middle of the show, or did you just completely
No,
finish while it
we
was
kind of
flooding?
looked at the front door, which is right directly next to the right side of the stage, and we were looking at this little pond that's starting to form underneath the front door, and then it started to kind of creep out towards the first bar, and we were like, show's almost over. Maybe we should get out of here. And then we drove next day, after everything was fixed, all the way to Virginia, camped out another Walmart, and then made our way to Virginia Beach. We played OConnor Brewing Company. And that was interesting in just general. Ralph Northman, the lieutenant governor of Virginia, he was speaking that night. So they cut 2 hours off of our 3-hour set.
Wow.
And guy shows up late to his own party, everything.
What a guy. He's got my vote.
We got free beer, so hey,
Free
what?
beer is
Free beer is a good
definitely
incentive.
still got
And
paid.
good beer.
Oh,
And we
yeah,
still
great
got paid
beer.
for the full 3-hour set. Thank you, O'Connor Brewer Company.
We
Thank
love you.
you.
El Guapo.
There
Thank
go.
you, Lucy.
Yeah, Lucy, we love you.
Yes, we do.
It's beautiful.
So we played there, and then we ended up having a nice 3 days out on Virginia Beach. So it was like just out of the hurricane, the clouds are parting, and we got to spend some time on the beach.
It's beautiful.
And then we made our way to Philadelphia, played the Hard Rock in downtown. We've been to a couple Hard Rocks in a few cities, so they kind of have us as a part of kind of their circuit.
Nice.
And for a couple the eastern side.
So you guys got to be pretty miserable now here in Pittsburgh with this cold.
No, I love it.
It is kind of chilly. Ben
It's
loves
nice
it,
today,
but
though.
we're all frigid.
Last night
you
was a
know.
little chilly, but we.
He even admitted it was cold last
Not
night.
the little
so.
tequila and bourbon.
But we're also from northern Massachusetts.
That's
We're not
true.
blood.
Yeah.
We're-
I'll be honest, I grew up in Pittsburgh. I never lived anywhere else, but I'm a little bitch when it comes to the winter. I hate it. There is nothing I find satisfying
Come
whatsoever.
Check out Tennessee in the winter, you can rock 80 degrees.
That would
on
be
a December
fantastic.
Day, you know?
That is exactly my type of winter. There's that Jimmy Buffett song, or it's not a Jimmy Buffett song, but he covers it. It's I think he covers it. It's Christmas Island.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's my type of Christmas. Santa cruising in on a canoe
Yeah.
and
Jamaica.
yeah, that's exactly White Christmas. Yeah,
Yeah, it's nice.
forget that. Absolutely. So you guys have been on tour. Where are you headed next? Are you going up to Massachusetts?
No,
Well,
we
just came
actually
from- We
Oh, okay, you just
we just
came
played
from.
Massachusetts. Our home crowd. We probably played to
Yeah, 300,
300 or 400 people.
Sunset
Oh,
Tiki
wow.
Bar's where it's at.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Westford, Massachusetts.
We have a big
We love them.
following at our hometown of Massachusetts. That's kind of home base for us when it comes to a fan base. So it's, we came back. We left for Tennessee. People always liked us. And then we left and we came back. And we saw. And then we did that last year, and there was a lot of people. And then we came back this year, and it doubled. And if we go back again, I'm sure we'll need to find a new venue to hold more people. But so we're growing our fan base up in the Northeast. It's good. And then we played Providence, Rhode Island 2 nights ago, and drove the 10 hours to get to here. And then after this, on the 14th, we're playing at the Empire Concert Club in Akron, Ohio.
Okay.
And then we're going to do a gig in Cincinnati, and then we're playing in Louisville, Kentucky, and then back to Tennessee. So been on the road about 3 weeks.
Yeah, I had a friend who grew up in Louisville, and I very much know you have to say it that way. Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
pronounce it the grammatically correct way, or else you get
Yeah.
yelled at. So
Gotta have your mouth full.
Yeah. So you guys are performing tonight here at the Funhouse at Mr. Small's, which you can actually see right through this window. You can see that banner hanging there. That
Yes.
is where you'll be performing tonight, right in
Yes.
that little section.
Heard it's
And
a cool
then-
joint.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And then tomorrow you'll be at the Smiling Moose, which is another
Yes.
awesome venue. And talk about two completely, not I wouldn't say different scenes, both have good crowds and good people there, but two completely different parts of town. Millville's kind of like that sleepy like community. You guys know, you've walked around a little. Whereas the Smiling Moose is in the South Side, which I believe it's still a fact that the South Side has more bars per capita on one street than any other city in the United States.
Great for musicians, terrible for civilians.
Yeah. So I mean,
Sounds like a
there's literally like
wonderful
when you look at the amount of people in Pittsburgh and you look at that one street, Carson Street, which the Smiling Moose is on, there are more bars per the population than anywhere. So you'll see it's literally bar after bar after bar after bar after bar.
Good.
But I actually feel like there's not that many music venues in the South Side, despite having so many bars.
Well, because a lot of the bars are like little hole in the wall bars. They can't really support a large crowd.
I don't even know if that's the case. I think they're just all the same bar. It's kind of like, pay a $10 cover to listen to the same music as the bar right next to us, which is also charging a $10 cover, and we're going to charge you more for beer. Whereas, like, the Smiling Moose, you pay a cover to get into that for the upstairs, not the downstairs. Yeah, but you're getting
listening. It's only $5.
only $5, and you're getting live entertainment. You're not spending $10 to pay more money for alcohol to listen to really loud, bad music.
Yeah, we're gonna
all
walk
at the
down
same
the
time.
street and just bring everyone in. Like, come on over. You want to check this out?
Yeah,
you
in a
know?
way, like the Smiling Moose is kind of in a good spot
Yeah.
because they can kind of take advantage of. I don't know, maybe not, because usually the people going to the bars with the really loud, bad music that pay the $10, they're usually. I don't want to generalize, but a lot of them are pretty douchey, so they aren't really probably the type that would be.
We're
interested
pretty
in-
good at making friends, so
There you go.
Or
So.
they hate us.
one of the two. But it usually works out.
Yeah, there's no middle. Yeah. Hey, real quick, I'm sorry, but is that a shark with a freaking laser beam on its head?
It is, yes. It is a shark with a frickin' laser beam on its head. And this actually came about from an
Yeah,
episode.
baby.
There's a podcast
Find it in a
that
basement.
you could, yeah. That's actually a great idea. Actually, that is a fantastic idea because, okay, so like this is what we could do. People have often been calling, recently, I think it may have been you that coined this phrase, Michael. I'm not sure, referring to Mr. Smalls as a compound. Was that you?
I don't know if I was the first one to do it, but I certainly know a compound when I see one, and I call it out because I like them.
Okay. So what if we could create like a swimming pool of sharks with frickin' laser beams
Attached
on
to their frickin'
attached to their
heads.
frickin' heads? Yeah. Underneath this studio, and then we can get the trap door, and then like say, I don't know, you come in here and like
Walk in while you're on the air. And
what's
douchey
that?
Stuff like that. So walk in while you guys are on the air.
Yeah, or like you're
You
sitting
do the
there and
best.
you're like, man, I don't like green burials. I'm gonna go and go like Return of the Jedi style and just like light my ass on fire on a big pile of sticks, and I can be like, oh no, it's Hans or gone. Click the button, and then there you go. You're in a big tub of sharks with laser pointers. Would you think a
Attached to
laser
their
would even
freaking
work underwater with a shark? Do you think that would even be like
Guess
something
it
that would
depends
happen?
on your laser.
You
Yeah,
got that right.
You need to train them to surface first.
that might be
Now
it.
you gotta
Yeah.
pay for training.
That might
This is
cost.
getting logistics are just getting out of hand here.
It's
Yes.
all right. River's Edge is going to be rolling in dough this time 5 years from now.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
We'll be
Oh,
set.
that fucking
Well, I mean, it makes sense because I believe this actually comes from the movie too, Austin Powers, where he
Yeah,
mentioned.
baby.
Well,
yeah.
yeah. But then he mentioned that like the sharks need a warm meal, and because I feel like that's the whole point of like the laser beam is it sharks, they need a warm meal too. Why should they have to just eat soggy, cold
Seal.
flesh? Yeah, or human
They
or
just
whatever.
Well, it'll be warm if they eat quick.
What's that?
But it'll be warm if they eat quick. It's body temperature.
Yeah.
Finding it's a mammal. That's right. The fish will be cold.
Well, not if they heat them up
Yeah,
with the laser
Yeah.
pointer, the freaking laser pointer. Maybe it could be like bacon, where if you fry them enough, it's kind of like that crispy,
Yeah.
like do you guys like crispy bacon, or do you
Yeah,
like
of
the?
course.
Yeah.
If it's not
I
crispy,
I hate
it's
people
not
like I
bacon.
hate when it's not crispy. I like the
Kevin, I
crispy.
hope you're listening.
hate
Eat
me.
bacon.
I hate you, yeah.
Oh,
You bastard.
Where's the bacon?
Yeah.
bacon.
Our friend
You
does
don't like
not
bacon at all?
I love bacon. I
Oh,
just
okay.
like I like the chewy bacon.
Oh, really? Okay.
Get
So I
outta
like
here.
I
the
like all
crispy.
bacon. I'll take it anyway.
Well, that's
Oh,
yeah. I mean, if
come
it comes down to like flimsy bacon or no bacon at all,
Bacon swinger.
then
I'll take it anyway.
yeah, then I'll go with the bacon. But sure. But if I have my choice, to me
Crispy.
it's crispy all the way. So you guys have a new album coming out, right?
Oh, we're
Right?
recording it.
Yeah.
We just put out a single on Friday, and this is the first of many tracks. We're gonna shoot for 10, 11, 12 tracks, and it's our first full-length studio album. We have an EP out, but yeah, we're in the midst of recording now. The tour kind of put it on pause, but yeah.
How's that going? What can we expect from that album? And if people hear you tonight at Mr. Small's Funhouse, or if they hear you at the Smiling Moose, or they hear you right now on the River's Edge and they want to check it out.
We actually just
can they
on
follow
Friday night we released the first single off the album called No Longer Waiting. It's pretty much anywhere you go online you can find it. Spotify, iTunes. We pretty much put it on every musical service. We have it on our website or SoundCloud. So that's our first single coming out. We're going to plan on having one more single coming out before the full album is released. We don't have a date on that yet, but it should be out soon.
Very cool. So that's exciting. And to keep up to date with you guys, you can check out www.squarethevinyl.com, facebook.com/squarethevinyl. So you said this is your first time in Pittsburgh, so you've never been to either of these venues at all?
Nope.
Okay.
We had our good friend Nathan J. Hope Nathan
Yeah,
J
Nathan
listening.
is great.
We're
Great
staying.
guy.
Yeah, we're
He
staying
is.
with him. Him and his wife Erin have been very welcoming. We're staying. Our
Give a
RV
shout
parked at
out.
their house. Yeah, shout out to Nathan. And
Now, did you
Standard
guys
broadcast?
meet Nathan before you came to Pittsburgh, or
We met him while we were contacting for venues.
Okay.
So we would contact bands and get them to help us get the gigs, and so him and Standard Broadcast got back to us. We've been in touch, and he offered to let us stay at his house, and he's the one that found us this radio show here on the River's
Yeah,
Edge.
we just had them on like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So he recommended you to us and us to you, and he got us the gig tonight and tomorrow night. So he really hooked
He
us
is
up.
the greatest.
Nathan J.
In all
Standard
seriousness.
Broadcast.
Yeah,
Yeah, good
they-
Pittsburgh band, Standard Broadcast.
They actually just
We love you.
performed here at the main stage at Mr. Small's. So Mr.
Yeah,
Small's
they-
actually, they eventually,
Awesome tunes.
yeah, and they'll eventually have 3 stages here available, which will be awesome. So
And
the
we'll be
main
back,
stage, the main
definitely.
stage can seat over 800 people. So it's a really beautiful stage.
Wow,
The
great.
acoustics are great. It's really an awesome space. So where you guys will be at tonight is the Funhouse, and it's a 175 seated theater. But it's really an awesome. I believe that's what it is. Yeah.
We like the
Well,
shows
it's
to
a
be
show, yeah.
intimate.
It's got a
Smaller
beautiful
shows
stage.
are better shows.
Well, I love this space because it's a giant bar, and it's kind of cool because you can see the courtyard behind us, and it exits out into that courtyard. So if somebody needs to have a conversation, they can just walk outside, have that conversation, come on back. It's a really nice bar, really great staff. So I think you guys will like it. It's a really
we're looking forward
really
to
cool
it.
space.
We sure
So,
are.
awesome. So you guys have one more song for us today, and we'll close out with that. But before we take off, Michael, what do you have coming up this week?
This week, over at the Clayton Bowl on Bryant Street in Highland Park, the Highlanders are putting on their second show, and that is a new booking group of comics and musicians. I'm gonna be opening up for Chris Mohan. Vincent Didiano is going to be hosting, and Stacy Florim is going to be also featured on that show. It's $5. It's at doors at 7, show at 8. It's going to be fantastic.
Excellent. So check that out. Also, if you like what you are listening to now and you're listening from home, you can find us on iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Google Play, all of those things. And on September 30th, for International Podcast Day, we will be having a pod party at Panza Gallery right down the street from Mr. Small's on Sedgwick Street. We will be offering free beer from North Country Brewing and free mead from Laurel Highlands Meadery. We'll be showcasing this show, River Talk. We'll be showcasing that broadcast with Liz Victory, the Mike Sasson Show, and Rob Spears' Damn Near Killed Him. So that's going to be September 30th from 6 to 10 p.m. at Panza Gallery right here in Millville. Do not miss that. One more song from you guys here, and again, you can, let's shoot out the times. You're tonight here, AcoustiCafe, the doors open at 6, show usually starts at 7:15, and then Smiling Moose, what time do you use?
Probably about 7:30.
7:30 for that. So this has been Vinyl Square here on the River's Edge Radio Network. I'm Brian Crawford with Michael Cohen, signing off here on Pittsburgh's Voice for local music.
Thank you, guys. 1, 2, 3, 4.
never meant no disrespect or unhappiness at all. Life is feeling oh so strange, finding hard to recreate what my mind wants me to say. 'Cause who I ought to be, you can't take that away from me. And who I thought I was, will be changed from the mud. Looking for a sign to find my way back home. It's on its way, it's on its way, oh yeah. But I don't care what I've been trying to say. It all comes back to that one old summer day. So let it be. No, you just can't see what these thoughts will take if you don't set them free. Whoa. I found my way back to my soul. I can breathe when I got a one-way ticket for me now that I think I really need. Well, I guess we'll see who I ought to be. You can't take that away from me. Who I thought I was, you changed from month to month. Looking for a sign to find my way back home. It's on its way, it's on its way, oh yeah. But I don't care what I've been trying to say. It all comes back to that one old summer day. So let it be. Just can't see what these thoughts will take. You don't set them free.